Hello everyone. Power of culture for organizational excellence. We will be talking on this topic in this particular presentation. So let us proceed as to understand the importance of culture and organization excellence. Whenever we say organizational excellence, is the performance that needs to be monitored or probably measured. So the agenda is very simple. We'll talk about the organizational cultures, how it gets formed, sustains over a period of time. We'll differentiate between four types of organizational cultures: the cultures that can influence the ethical behavior of the employees and the managers alike. Believe me or not, it actually does. It's the way you conduct yourself will make certain things feasible and certain things unfeasible. Please replace the word feasible with ethical and unethical, acceptable or unacceptable, as the case might be. So, the reasons why we should develop a cultural diversity, because will keep us level-headed. The organizations will be relevant and will be able to judge a point of view, or should I say, a judge an issue or an event from different perspective altogether. So, we'll talk about the organizational socializations and its effects on the culture thereby. So let us begin with the component of the organization culture. So the routine ways of communicating. The way we communicate is which will determine what kind of organization is all about it. If we communicate freely, absolutely freely, and if the communication is on a transparent basis, the organization will be viewed as much more democratic. But on the contrary, if there are limited communication and you are supposed not to communicate with all the employees, or limit your communication to the employees of your concerns, of which you with whom you will be actually working for. It tells the organizations of the culture of the organization cultures would be a little limiting, or should I, a little autocratic in nature. So basically, the norms which is shared by individuals and teams, we will talk about the dominant values. I've given you two examples where the organization is democratic in nature, wherein there is a transparency in communication, and whenever the communication gets limited or gets opaque, or probably there are free interaction is not encouraged, it means the organization is little autocratic in size and style of working. Guiding philosophy for management policies and decision making, rules of the game for getting along in the organization, as the case might be. Last but not the least is the climate of the organization that we actually speak around. Let us understand the four layers of organizational cultures. One, the basic one is the assumption that's been stated out here. It's a shared assumption that everybody believes so. What should be the cultures of the organization? Then comes the cultural values. The cultural values is what is been emphasized upon. If transparency is been emphasized upon, if secrecy is been emphasized upon, you will understand the cultural values that has been there. And based on these things, the shared assumptions and the cultural value, will you start behaving in a particular fashion, and that is what the shared behaviors is all about it. Once you establish the shared behavior, this is where the cultural symbols take shape, takes form altogether. And that is what the layers of organizational culture is all about it. So let us understand the issue associated with external adaptation, probably for the survival of the organization before it starts performing. And once the organization starts performing, we can then probably strive for excellence thereby. So identifying organization primarily mission and selecting strategies to pursue it, as the case might be. How we go across it: setting specific targets. How do you go around it? Determining how to pursue the goals, including selecting an organization structures and reward system. We need to understand what are the goals, how the goals have been fragmented, how it has been departmentalized or compartmentalized, where is the unification of the process taking place, what are the rewards, what are the incentives for achieving the goals on time, on the basis of cost, and so on and so forth. So have a clear distinct idea and criteria to measure what a performance is all about it, be it on an individual level, team level, or department level. Remember, your performances are always oriented towards the organizational goals, the goals which might be fragmented or segmented and given as a target to individuals, teams, or the department thereby. We talk about the internal integrations. What are the issues there around it? First and foremost thing are the methods of communication and the modus operandi. How do we operate upon it? Establish criteria for membership in groups and in teams, as the case might be. Determine rule for acquiring, maintaining, losing power and status. How do we go across, as the case scenario simply reflects. Developing system for encouraging desirable behaviors and discouraging undesirable behaviors per se. How do we go across it? We need to identify the system. We need to find out what is acceptable and what is unacceptable. How do we maintain the status quo and what can actually rock the boat of an organization? So let us understand the engagement process altogether. Remember, it starts from the top management and how they explicit the behavior, what are the ethos that they believe in, what are the result orientation that we are objecting around it. Based upon it is only where the organizational cultures will actually creep in or start breeding. So top management has to agree on a certain assumptions, certain behavior which are acceptable. Develop a shared visions of the cultural values thereby. The behaviors the employees are supposed to behave in a particular fashion, definitely, and this particular fashion should be consistent over a period of time, no matter what the situation is all about it. So it is the top management who are the drivers based on the assumption of the value that they want to go around it. Based on the assumption, the employee starts behaving in a particular fashion, which actually translate into the result as in the financial performances, the market share, the employee commitment. The strong culture that comes around it, the strong culture emerges, traditions are maintained, socialization practices for new employees, as the case might be. This is what we are looking forward to it. So, methods of maintaining organization cultures. How do we go about maintaining the OC or the organization culture? Something which everybody pays attention to. This is what we need to understand. If you are behaving in a particular fashion and people are appreciating for you, that means you please continue behaving in a particular fashion. But if that fashion is not been appreciated, or probably you have it been ignored or humiliated or outrightly categorically stated not to adopt such a behavior or abandon this particular behavior, do so. That is what the managers and teams are paying attention for. Remember, another way is when there is the house is on the fire, how do you behave? Reactions to the crisis, the manager's role modeling. How do you believe? How do you see your seniors in an organization behaving in a particular fashion? Criteria for rewards, criteria for selection and promotion, organizational rights, ceremonies, and stories, as the case might be. Now, these all actually translate into organizational culture. Remember, every time there's a new blood which has been introduced in the organization in the form of a new recruitee, you need to groom them within the culture. And the people who are not even able to adjust themselves to the organizational culture will definitely will be eliminated, because that is what we do not want. We do not want to rock the boat. We do not want the cultures to be disturbed in any fashion, as the case might be. So organizational rights, I'll just give you certain example, glorifying example, which has been there. For example, in the rite of passage, which is there in a basic training or US Army, probably the graduation ceremony that comes around it on a day-to-day life. So it's basically is facilitating transitions into a new roles. So every time there's a graduation ceremony, I've just given an US Army scenario. It can be percolated to any of the colleges, any of the universities. On your on the graduation ceremony, you've been facilitating that your studentship or probably the life of a student is now to be transformed into a working, productive individual of the society. So there is a minimized differences and the ways roles are to be carried out. Similarly, for rights of degradation is wherein a person has been fired around it. What does this mean? It's basically not only humiliation, but reducing the power and identity, or probably reaffirming a proper behavior accordingly, not only to the existing employees, but also ensuring that these things are to be made noticed into as made as an example. Rights of enhancement. If there is a degradation, there is a rights of enhancement. Let's say there are many companies that comes around it. So I gave you a very nominal company with which you may be able to identify yourself or may not be. But then this translates into any and every company that comes in your vicinity. Basically, it enhances the power and identity. It's a promotion that has been giving around it. Now, individual promotions from with higher roles, higher responsibilities, higher duties, and definitely higher pay packages, as the case might be. Similarly, would be rights of integration as an office party, which has been thrown every now and then, which basically encourages the common feeling of the binding members. Now, this I have actually taken from the work called the Cultures of Work Organization has been published by Angel Cliffs and Prentice Hall as the publishers, as the case might be. So, requirement of successful organizational culture first and foremost is to understand the old culture. Now, then thereafter, you need to probably extend supports to employees and teams who have an idea for better cultures and are willing to act on those ideas, as the case might be. That is very true that you need to understand. Find the most effective cultures in the organization. Remember, this is what we are looking for. Use it as a model. Help employees and teams to do their job much more effectively, as the case might be. This is what we are looking forward to. So, use visions of a new culture as a guiding of change. Definitely, yes. A guiding of change in the sense the change objective that you want to achieve in, and that is how we look around it. Recognize the significance of cultural change over a period of time as it happens. Live the new culture if possible. So you've started from an old culture and then you integrated itself and probably repositioned and reformed into a new faith in the new cultures altogether. So the vision needs to be clear, percolated to all the employees. Now, framework. There are basically the framework that has been given by Huchberg and Petrick on a cultural change. Let us map on the y-axis the form of control orientation, on the x-axis the form of attention as per se. If you look into it, when the form of attention is internal and the control orientation is stable, so there is nothing unstable and internal. So everything is within your control. Believe me or not, this is nothing but a bureaucratic culture. So you know you have the full control over it. The ambit doesn't extend beyond the organization. It's a bureaucratic culture. But what happens when the form of attention is definitely internal, but the control orientation is dynamic or flexible? Now this is where you need to move with what actually is happening in the environment. It's a clan culture that comes around it. In a corporate world, as in your competitors, if your competitor is raising the prices, you may mimic that price, or if they are reducing their prices, you have to force to reduce the price, because otherwise you will be forced into extension by your competitors. So it's basically a clan culture within an industry, within a fiercely competitive market. You have to work around it. Similarly, now let us fixate it the formal orientation, control orientation is to be stable, but this time the form of attention is beyond you as an organization, beyond external. So it becomes a market culture that comes around it. It is depending. Believe me, in clan culture, it was your competitors who were deciding factor, but in this case, it will be your customer, not your competitors. Their customers will be deciding whether they are looking to avail your product at a particular price point or not, and probably are they accepting your quality and so on and so forth. So depending upon the market culture, you will have to shape up your work cultures altogether, the organizational culture. But what everything is dynamic in terms of control orientations and form of attention. Everything is beyond you and probably dynamic in nature. It is an entrepreneurial culture that we believe in. You have to be on your toes. You need to customize every product as per the requirement thereby. Let us understand these four cultures one by one. The attributes of bureaucratic culture are long-term concepts. Concerns for predictability, efficiency, and stability. In bureaucratic culture, you remember everything is within the control of the person. Members value standardized goods and services. Definitely, yes. Managers view their role as being good coordinator, organizer, enforcers of written rules and standard, as the case might be. Task responsibility is where the authority, rules, and processes are clearly, absolutely well defined altogether. In bureaucratic culture, there are nothing left to chances. You have your work handbook, or should I say employee handbook, wherein everything is specifically stated altogether. Now let us move to the clan culture. What is the attributes of clan culture? I have already discussed with you. Members understand the contribution of the organization and it can exceed any contractual agreement as the case might be. Remember, clan culture achieves unity with a long and thorough socialization process. Now you are being identified as a part of a clan, a part of a group, a part of a community per se. So that is, you are supposed to display similar characteristics as your community is showing. So remember, every time I say about community, there will be members, membership, feeling of pride in membership, as well as a feeling of personal ownership of a business, a product, or an idea, as the case might be. Attributes of clan culture, let us understand there is a peer pressure to adhere to important norms is strong. Absolutely, is to be adhered to important norms is so strong. Success is assumed to depend substantially on sensitivity to customers and concerns for people, as is been done. In within your clan, it becomes very imperative to have you to command respect. Teamwork, participation, and consensus decision making are believed to lead success as the case might be. Now let me discuss the entrepreneurial culture. And the entrepreneurial culture in the form of control is external and form of um, both the market controls and the organizational control is beyond it and isn't dynamic in nature altogether. So that is where you have to be entrepreneurial in orientations. There is a commitment for experimentation, innovations, and being leading the edge. The culture does not quickly react to changes in the environment. It creates the change as we are looking forward to it. Effectiveness depends on providing the new and unique products and rapid growth thereby. If you can just go around it, we will talk as per possible. Individual initiativeness is flexibility and freedom fosters growth, are encouraged and well rewarded as the case might be. If you look forward, we are supposed to go ahead with it. Attributes of market culture. Now let us talk about the market cultures one and for all. So it's a contractual relationship between an individual and an organization. Remember, it's the organizational culture that comes around it. The individual will be under a bond, under an agreement with the organization, and similarly, the organization is supposed to uphold those promises that has been made. Independence, individuality are valued, and members are encouraged to pursue their own financial goals as the case might be. Does not exert much social pressure on an organizational member, but when it does, members are expected to conform with it. That is what we are looking forward to it. Supervisors' interactions with subordinates largely consist of negotiating performances, rewards, agreements, and or evaluating the request for resource allocation with it. You need to go around it. I do not see any differences if you are not interacting, if you are not communicating. This interaction with the management, with the employees, are all about performance related, are all about incentive related. It's the agreement that you got to put in, as in what will be the rewards and the resources which has been allocated. May have a weak socialization promise because this is almost a barter system that we want to go around it. A few economic incentives are definitely tied directly to the with the peers, often tied on a monthly, quarterly, annual performance goal based on profit, as the case might be. It might be profit sharing also, it might be some sort of incentive, it can be salaries, it can be wages, it can be a host of other things that might be possible to ensure the market culture in an organization thrive. So how is organizational uses of cultures are all been done? Remember, the culture has the potential to enhance the organization performances. I have been telling it to you. The role of culture for organizational excellence. Organizational excellence was all about organizational performances, and this was stated at the very opening dialogue of this particular presentation. Remember, individual satisfaction and a variety of expectation, attitude, and behavior in an organization is a must. If an organization culture is not aligned with the changing expectation of internal or perhaps the external stakeholder, the organization effectiveness would automatically decline over a period of time. So you need to be dynamic, you need to get yourself aligned, you need to make sure that you are making sense of your existence. You are ensuring that there are movers and shakers and people are taking a notice of an organization in the environment, in the market, as the case might be. So organizational cultures and performances are interrelated. Although evidence exists regarding the exact nature of the relationship is quite complex. But believe me or not, organizational cultures affects the employee behavior and the performances thereby. Assessing which attributes of an organizational culture needs to be preserved and which one needs to be modified is a constant organizational needs that comes across it. Let us talk about the cultures and performances. Organizational cultures can have a significant impact on firms' long-term economic performances per se. Organizational cultures will probably be even more important factors in determining success or failure of firm during the next decade, as the case might be. Let us understand the cultures and performances. I keep on saying about it. Strong organizational cultures would inhibit strong long-term financial performances. This is particularly impossible. Absolutely, uh, a cultures that inhibit strong long-term finances are absolutely not not seen on a rare basis. They develop easily, even in firms that are filled with reasonable and intelligent organization. So we have a vibrant organizational culture that will only be successful in the longest of the terms in the existing of the during the market scenario. So that is what we're looking into it. Although tough to change, organizational cultures can be made more performance enhancing if employees understand what is it that sustains a culture, what is it that is an impediment to development, what is it that is a vital ingredients to enhance performances over a period of time. Let us talk about the effects of organizational cultures on employee behaviors and the performances thereby. Remember, an employee will understand about the philosophy of the firms operate in based upon the history or probably the current mode of operation. It will foster commitment to the corporate philosophy and values, as the case might be, serves as a control mechanism for employee behaviors. Certain culture types may produce greater effectiveness and productivity. A culture emphasizing ethical norms provides support for ethical behaviors. Top managers plays a key role in fostering ethical behaviors by exhibiting correct behaviors in totality. The presence or absence of ethical behaviors in managerial actions both influences and reflect the cultures thereby. This is what is all true. Now, how employees can change? Now, you let me know how employees can change unethical behavior. Secretly or publicly reporting unethical actions to a higher level within the organization is a must thing. Probably, if you report such things, probably it helps to dissuade employees or from performing such acts, or probably it sensitizes the management as to what actually is happening. Secretly or publicly reporting unethical action to someone outside the organization. Probably you may do it, you may not do it. Or should I say, secretly or publicly threatening an offender or responsible managers with reporting unethical actions thereby. So basically, what are you trying to do? It's basically sensitizing, basically putting a stop to all unethical practices, quietly or publicly refusing to implement any unethical orders or policies is thereby. Now, how do we go across by creating a culture that encourages ethical business? So, be realistic in setting values. Probably goals regarding an employee relationship. Absolutely realistic within the social norms. If you can do it, nothing like it. Encourage input from organizational members regarding appropriate values practices for implementing the culture thereby. Opt for a strong culture that encourages rewards and diversity and the principled dissent, as the case might be. provide training on adopting and implementing the organization values thereby. This is what we are talking all about it. This is what we are interested to talk around it. There we will create an organizational culture which will be full of respect, full of transparency, full of commitment, and full of loyalty towards one another, be it about the employees or towards the organization. That is the strong culture that encourages reward and rewards diversity on a principled descent. So let us give you a blueprint to how to manage such diversity. Organizational member must understand the nature of diversity. People are coming from different walks of life and value the variety of opinion and insight that comes around. Recognize, probably even learn opportunities and challenges presented by the expression on a different point of views, different perspective. On the other hand, the organizational culture must foster expectation for higher standards of performance and ethics for everyone, stimulate personal development, encourages openness, make worker feel valued as the case might be. At the end of the day, it is the organization must have a well articulated and widely understood mission. The mission, the vision, everybody should know why are they working and what are the outcomes that they are desiring at the end of the day, quarter, month, fiscal year, and so on and so forth. So let us promote the idea of socialization. Now, there are 7 steps of socialization. First and foremost, whenever you select, whenever you recruit a person, please ensure that you are recruiting the person who will be able to amalgamate within the existing workforce very easily. So challenging early work assignments. Probably this is difficult, probably yes, but at the same time, this gives you an insights to how good the person is going to be and how what will be the contributions all around it. Training to develop capabilities consistent with culture, rewards that sustain the culture, adoption of the culture value policies, rituals, taboos, rites, and stories to reinforce culture thereby, and the role model of this to sustain the cultures in the process. So let us understand the removal of candidates which do not feel fit the cultures and remove all of the employees who deviate from the culture. And at point number one, you will not be incorporating the first step or probably not recruiting a person who might not be able to amalgamate himself or herself within the organizational culture, or by the step number fifth, when the adoption of cultural values policy says there might be people who might not be very comfortable with the values or the culture that the organization professes. So people might deviate or they might part ways altogether. But once this team is formed, the ritual, the taboo, the rites, the stories, it will be there. People are there to be minded for and will work in tandem, in cooperation with one another for the successful operation of the organization. Let us understand the very last slide between what is successful socialization, and then I'll move to the unsuccessful socialization reflected. So let us begin with the successful socialization process and how does it reflect in? It reflects in job satisfaction, role clarity. There is a high work motivation, understands the culture, the perceived controls, the modus operandi, the job involvement. The commitment to organization is what is very important, the tenure, the duration of the firms altogether, and high performances. Then comes the last one would be the internalized values thereby. Now, talking about the unsuccessful socialization process is all about the opposite of job satisfaction, the job dissatisfaction. Opposite of role clarity would be role ambiguity or conflict. Similarly, high work motivation would lead to low work motivation. Understanding of cultures and perceived control will lead to misunderstanding of and probably tension, perceived lack of control. See what is happening with unsuccessful socializations, which reflects in low job involvement, lack of commitment towards the organization, shorter tenure, absenteeism, absolutely high attrition rate, low performances, and this is what we look into it. And probably in terms of values, there is a rejection of values either from the company's end, the organization end, or from the employees end as such. So if these are the possible outcome of socialization process, these will reflect, this will tell it how good or bad or ugly the organization is going to go around with it. So ensure your organization culture is intact. Ensure the organizational cultures which has been successful for a few decades back, will it require a new polish or will it require a change in the values, the ethos? If so, please adopt it, because at the end of the day, organizational performance is absolutely reflected and been deeply ingrained in the organizational culture. So, with these words, I come to an end of this presentation. Thank you for watching this video.